Hello, I'm Michael Rawson, the Sub-Dean, and welcome to Southwark Cathedral's podcast. And today I'm delighted to introduce you to Lara Maiklem. Lara has written 4 books, including a Sunday Times bestseller. They're all great reads and a must-have on your wish list. Lara has spent a lifetime looking down for lost objects and interesting things. She's a wonderful and supportive friend of Southwark Cathedral over many years, and we're so grateful for your friendship and generous encouragement. So here is Lara. It's great to see you, Lara.
And you, Michael.
So tell us a little bit about being a mudlark. When I first landed in Southwark from Yorkshire, I'd never heard of mudlarks.
Well, a mudlark, simply put, is somebody with a curious nature that goes down onto the banks of a river looking for objects that have been lost and thrown away, looking for history, really, because rivers are great receptacles of rubbish. People would throw lots of rubbish in, and also very busy places, so people would lose things. And of course, London has got 2,000 years of intense habitation, and it's tidal, which means on the low tide, and they happen twice a day, you can go down onto the actual riverbed and you can look around for ancient objects. And simply put, that's what a modern mudlark is.
Okay. What's a historical mudlark?
Well, the mudlarks, the original mudlarks, really were the poorest of the poor. They were the people on the very fringes of society who would search for anything they could use or sell. So they'd be looking for coal and rope, and if they were lucky, they might find a copper nail or an old tool. Anything they could use or sell to keep themselves out of the workhouse. And their lives were dreadful. They would wade around in stinking, fetid mud because, of course, the river in the 19th century particularly was just a moving sewer.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably been river scavengers for as long as there's been people desperate enough to look for things, and people throwing things away and losing things. But really the ones that we think about historically are the Victorian mudlarks. They were written about really very eloquently and very beautifully by the historians of the time. And so we know an awful lot about them. And we would have, 150 years ago, we would have seen these people working riverbanks.
So you're a person who looks down?
I look down a lot, yes. Every mudlark hopes that they're going to find something really unusual and really exciting, something maybe that will change our notion of history. Mudlarking is hugely meditative. It's a great place to go to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and to just spend, half an hour or more just with your own thoughts. And they're using their hands, but they're freeing their mind. So really, I find it very difficult to sit still. I would never be able to just sit and meditate. So if I'm walking and looking and mudlarking, I can cleanse my mind while I'm doing it. I've
been on one of your foreshore walks.
Yes.
That was amazing because all you do, you have to concentrate on what you're doing.
You do, absolutely. And you probably found that, didn't you? And as soon as I say to people, stop looking, just relax, stop looking, then you start seeing things because you're looking for things that don't fit, human-made objects that don't look the same as the objects that Mother Nature's produced. So, they're often perfectly round or perfectly straight. So you're looking for those perfect circles and the straight lines and the patterns that aren't quite natural. But it is a case of practice. A lot of it's luck. Huge amount of mudlarking is luck. Just being at the right place at the right time, on the right tide, when something happens to wash up or wash out. And that's when you find things.
What's the most interesting thing you've found? I guess you've got drawers and drawers of things you've found. But
well, do you know what? I've been mudlarking now for over 20 years. And I do have a reasonable amount of stuff, but I don't take everything away because I take quite a philosophical approach. I don't dig and I don't scrape and I don't use a metal detector. So I wait for the river to deliver what it feels it can deliver on that day. And I love that sense of I only take what's meant to be there. I don't force it to give up its treasures. I don't take everything because, how many clay pipes do you really need? If I took every single one, my house would be stuffed and it's full enough as it is. So, and the things I do take tend to be small. So I don't take great big things. I just take little things and they all fit in my 18-drawer printer's chest. If I find something better than something I've already got, I'll take the thing I've got.
Right.
I give stuff to schools and smaller museums and, people, researchers and people who who will use it and love it and treasure it and give it a good home. The rest of it goes back to the river for someone else to find. The most interesting thing, it's really tricky because I find interesting things pretty much every time I go down there.
Yeah.
I think because I'm an interested person, so I can find interest in most things. But I have found some quite amazing things. I have found some wonderful Roman objects. I've got quite a collection of Roman hairpins, Roman game counters. One of them's got a scratch in. My favourite one has got little rat tooth marks all the way around it from a very hungry Roman rat who, was so desperate that they tried to eat a game counter. I actually found a box hinge, which doesn't sound very exciting to a lot of people. So
it's a Roman box hinge,
It's a Roman box hinge, and it's from a Roman box, and it's made of bone. And there's one in the British Museum, but the exciting thing about mine is the wooden dowel that's still inside it, because the river preserves things perfectly, because it's anaerobic. So anything that falls in there can be perfectly preserved for thousands of years. So you pull the most incredible things out of the river. Shoe soles are my favourite thing. I found gold, I found coins, they're all, it's lovely, but shoe soles are just magical because they preserve an essence of the person who lost them in a way that nothing else does. So,
almost like having a footprint there.
It is. And I say, when my grandmother died, I found her leather gloves. And it was like holding hands with her again. And it was beautiful, actually, just to be able to just hold this glove that was her hand.
Yeah.
And shoes are very similar. And I pulled a Tudor, it's a child's shoe. So it would have fitted my children when they were about 5, I suppose.
Okay.
Out of the mud. And I looked inside once I'd washed it off, and I could see the perfect imprint of their little person's toes and heel. And it was just spine tingling. It was just incredible, that moment, that intense and very intimate connection with someone from the past who's left nothing behind. And that's the other thing that mudlarking does. It really does teach you how transient we are, how life is so short and how we leave very little behind and how easily forgotten we are. And all they've left behind is this little shoe. We'll never know who it was, we'll never know how they lost it. But, now I've managed to get it preserved, because it's really hard to preserve leather. And I take it with me and show it to people whenever I can.
And I guess that transience of the tide comes in, the tide comes out, and leaves no trace of who we are.
It's the essence of time, the river. And I tried to write that into my second book, which was a diary, that sense of time, the fact that, that river has been going in and out since way before we were ever here, and it'll carry on doing it long after we've messed everything up and gone.
Yeah,
it's eternal. The river, in a way, nothing else is about London. London is so young and so new, but the river is ancient and so precious and so special and really spiritual as well. You sense that there is a sense of spirituality down there when you're there.
How do you think the health of the river has changed in your 25 years as a mudlark?
In my 25 years, I mean, a poor old river, we really have abused it. Back in the sort of mid-1800s, it was a moving sewer. It was disgusting. All of London's filth was pouring in. By the 1950s, after the First World War, when they bombed all the drains and the industrial waste was pouring in, it was biologically dead. There wasn't a single living creature between Gravesend and Battersea. So we've come an awfully long way. I think last count, there were over 125 species of fish in the river, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But up until recently, there was a huge amount of sewage going in there. They've opened up the big super sewer, which is a huge
I went down
drain.
to bless it.
Did you go down
Yes.
there? Oh, aren't you lucky?
Because they're good Catholic Italians and Irish on the whole, the tunnellers. They have a patron saint, St. Barbara. And so in all the Thames Tideway sewers, they have a statue of St. Barbara. And every time they opened up a new section, they asked one of the local clergy to bless it. So I went down. And after the pandemic, they asked me to go and bless the machine that was going to do the next bit, which came up on a barge.
Right.
And it was phenomenal.
It's the biggest bit of river engineering they've done since Bazalgette built the sewers back in, mid-1800s, which goes to show how neglected our system is. I mean, it looks very clean. For an urban river, it is very clean compared to a lot of urban rivers. But the plastic tends to float several inches underneath the surface, so you don't see it.
Okay.
We haven't changed. Nothing's changed. The human condition hasn't changed. Yes, we are littering. Yes, we're throwing our rubbish into the river. What's changed is the nature of the rubbish.
Yeah.
Because our ancestors' rubbish was made of biodegradable material. It was made of glass, bone, and wood.
Yeah.
And it's all quite harmlessly going back to where it came from.
Whereas plastic doesn't.
And the thing that really, really illustrates that are the cigarette ends and the clay pipes. And now we have vapes. From the late 1500s, early 1600s, people started smoking.
Yeah.
And they used clay pipes. And you can date them very easily by the size of the bowl.
And great to collect those. Will you be wanting to collect vapes?
I'm hoping at some time in the future, maybe they become a collectible thing. People do start to collect. There's so many down there. And it's not just the plastic, it's the heavy metals that are inside them as well.
Yeah.
They're horrors, they're dreadful, and people don't think, they just throw them in. So we have a clay pipe from the 1600s lying next to a vape that was thrown in yesterday. But that's the nature of the river.
Yeah,
the river
exactly.
Reflects London.
You found some type it's like a typeface, isn't it? Doves?
Doves, that's right.
And there's quite an interesting story behind that, isn't there?
Yes. Everybody loves the doves type story. It's very romantic and very obsessive. The story starts around the turn of the 20th century with two men, Emery Walker and Cobden Sanderson. And they were both members of the arts and crafts movement. And Cobden Sanderson was the more creative side of the duo. He was quite obsessive, a little bit of a strange man. Emery Walker was more pragmatic. He was the businessman. And they both developed together this beautiful typeface. The sort of more elaborate Victorian styles became more pared down, so 20th century styles.
Yeah.
And they called it Doves after the Doves pub, which was just a few doors down from Cobden Sanderson's house on the river at Hammersmith. And they had a bindery there. And of course, because they were part of the arts and crafts movement, they believed in doing everything by hand and everything absolutely beautifully and perfectly. And they printed and bound all their books by hand. And they are absolutely beautiful. But Cobden Sanderson would only use this font for the most perfect works of literature, and the Bible, and Wordsworth, and Shakespeare. But they did very well. They always sold. They were bound in vellum. They were just beautiful. If you can find any on the internet, have a look at them. They got on fine for about 6 years or so. And then Cobden Sanderson started to get really, really obsessive about this type, this font. It was almost a quasi-religious obsession for him, this perfect font and the quest for the perfect book. And the two men fell out. Cobden Sanderson said, well, I want the font. I want to sever our relationship. And Emery Walker said, no way. I want half. I'm owed half. And so they went into this protracted battle over it. And so Cobden Sanderson, he was an old man of over 70. He decided he was going to get rid of the whole lot in the river. And so over the course of about 6 months, he took a sort of pocketfuls and bagfuls of this heavy metal type down to the river and disposed of it. And he got rid of 500,000 pieces, and that's about a ton of lead type, all completely gone. Emery Walker couldn't use it anymore, couldn't use it for anything commercial, which was, what Cobden Sanderson was really dead against. And then a few years later, Cobden Sanderson died. He was cremated. His ashes were put into a nook in the wall at the bottom of his garden overlooking the river. And in 1928, there was a massive flood, and his ashes were washed out, and he went to join his beloved type in the river. The only bits left were a few bits of type that Emery Walker used to set a Christmas card for his wife, but it wasn't enough to recreate the type. It's gone forever. 1980s, a man called Rob Green comes along. He's a typographer, and he wants to use the type for a project he's working on. And he decides he's going to recreate it digitally. So he gets some ephemera. He goes to the British Museum. They wouldn't let him photocopy the books. He just couldn't get a good enough image of the type. And when you take metal type and you squash it into soft paper, it distorts. So it wasn't crisp enough for him. So he decides he's going to try and find the type himself in the river to recreate it. And luckily, Cobden Sanderson left volumes of increasingly mad diaries, venting his spleen at his ex-business partner and how much he hated him, and describing how he got rid of all these type and where he went and how he was hiding and doing this. And he worked out from his diaries where he thought he'd gone to get rid of it. And he got permission from the Port of London Authority and went down to the river, and he found a handful of type on his first visit. The PLA sent in divers, but altogether they only found 128 pieces of the 500,000 he threw in.
Yeah.
But it was enough for him to recreate it. And so I interviewed him for my book, and he let slip a few clues as to where the type might be. And I decided to go down and have a look for myself, and I found an F and a comma.
Really?
And he hadn't found a comma. So I laid claim to the comma, and my publisher used the type to set some of my book in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you've found are pilgrim badges, which you've also displayed here at the cathedral, haven't you? Do you want to tell us a bit about pilgrim badges?
More pilgrim badges have been found in the Thames than anywhere else. In medieval times, everyone was expected to go on a pilgrimage, as you probably know.
Indeed. They weren't particularly comfortable things in those days.
They were very dangerous. You could die on a pilgrimage. It was a major undertaking.
Go straight to heaven, though, if you died on a pilgrimage.
As long as you got to the shrine first. So you pick your shrine, depending on your needs and your ability and your how much money you had. And off you go to visit these incredible shrines at the various cathedrals in this country and abroad. And some people would even walk as far as Jerusalem. You were sort of almost guaranteeing your place in heaven, weren't you, by doing this? And when they got there, they could buy these little... It was a bit like buying a fridge magnet or a badge or something when we go...
I've been there. I've got the T-shirt.
I've been there. I'm a good pilgrim. You pin it to your cloak or your hat or your bag and maybe rub it against the shrine to bring a little bit of the, power and magic back. Maybe you've got a sick friend back in London and you want to give them one, or you want to nail it onto a beam in your house and have something there. People would buy several, probably, of those. They'd wear them back and they get back to London. And there's this, like, going back to what I said about the river being a spiritual place, it always has been. Since, way before London existed, people have been giving it offerings, hand axes, worked flints in prehistoric times. The Romans would flick a coin in as they crossed it for luck. And so in medieval times, it wasn't that different. People would still get home, they think, sometimes bend these badges in half and toss one into the river as a thank you for a safe return because, as we said, it was a very dangerous undertaking. And so we find that mudlarks have found huge numbers in the river. I mean, I say that, you're not going to just walk down there and find one. It is quite rare.
No. And in this part of the river?
Particularly in this part of the river, because this is where the old bridge was, London Bridge, and that was the only crossing in this part of the river. And there was actually a little chapel halfway across dedicated to St. Thomas Becket, who preached his last sermon.
He did
here.
indeed. We celebrated it a few years back.
Did you? A lot of pilgrims would start here. They'd start at maybe at the little chapel dedicated that actually St. Magnus had control of and got all the money from. And then Southwark Cathedral had control of the bridge from the chapel back here.
Down here.
And so off they go, they'd scuttle off down to Canterbury, which was one of the biggest shrines in Europe to worship at Becket's shrine.
Yeah.
And it was about a 4-day journey. You've done that, Jen, haven't you?
Yeah, it took me a little longer than that. It's 5.
5,
yeah.
5
quicker
for a medieval
pilgrim.
pilgrim.
Exactly.
Most of the pilgrim badges we find in the river are associated with Thomas Becket because it was the most travelled route. There was also Walsingham, and
been there too.
Edward the Confessor, have you?
Yeah.
They fascinate me. They absolutely fascinate me because just the journeys and the reasons and the just the thought of all these people travelling and they could get quite rowdy, these medieval pilgrimages as well.
Bawdy.
Quite bawdy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure whether the pilgrimages still are, but we still bless people here walking to Canterbury, which is a huge privilege. And we're now the first stopping place or the starting place for the Via Francigena to Rome. And some people say they're not religious, they're spiritual, or they want an intentional walk. But there's a huge amount of interest in pilgrimages.
I think as a reflection of where we are today, I think people are looking for ways to switch off and
to see what's really important in life.
Yeah.
And to be grateful for what we have.
Absolutely. I think that's what medieval pilgrim. It was time away from pretty dreadful lives. A holiday, a holy day.
Yeah.
They worked very hard in those days, and life was hard. Life was tough.
Yeah.
So to have 2 weeks off, or however long it took to do that,
and to have a glimpse of heaven,
to actually see some of the world sometimes.
Yeah.
So so I have found pilgrim badges. I found lots of pilgrim badges, and then between lockdowns, I was on the river, again, right opposite here. And I saw this little face looking back at me from the foreshore. And it was a bishop with this lovely little mitred hat on. And I thought it was Beckett. I was so excited because it took me nearly 20 years to find this.
Yeah.
I sent a picture to someone called Colin Terode, who is my go-to for anything pilgrim badge.
Mm-hmm.
He's exhibited his stuff here, and I showed it to him. He said, "Oh no, that's an Osmond of Salisbury. That's quite a rare one. There aren't many of those around."
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody had made the journey to or from or both Salisbury to visit Osmond's shrine. And Osmond was only canonized for the last 70 years before Henry VIII came along and destroyed all the shrines. So he was quite a short-lived official shrine. I think there was a cult to him before then. But he wasn't one of the big wigs. So for someone to make that journey, which is quite a long journey, down there and back again was quite incredible. So I have taken him back to Salisbury Cathedral, where a part of Osmond's shrine is still in the cathedral. And I went to the museum, and they've got one that's exactly the same. And it's so similar, they think it's made in the same mould. So I have promised it to Salisbury Cathedral at some point in the future for their collection, because they don't have one, but the museum down in Salisbury have, and they would like one. So I promised it to them. And I've also found another, it was half a pilgrim badge, literally on the foreshore, just there, there outside. And it was for Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the original cathedral here was dedicated to
St. Mary over the river.
And so whether or not it has associations with the medieval church or cathedral here, but it is St. Mary. It's her bottom half with a dove. And there's some lilies as well, and they're always associated with her. Yeah.
The fact you've got 350,000 followers, including Stanley Tucci.
Yes, he is a mudlark. He mudlarks further west than I mudlark.
Okay.
But mudlarking's really captured people's imagination, and it's really, people are fascinated by it. And I think it's a great way for people to engage with the history of our city.
Yeah.
I mean, the river has always been, for better or worse, it's taken London and England, Britain, out to the world, and it's brought the world into us as well. And I think the river is such a great meeting place, and it is a shared history of everybody, and it's a lost history of our ancestors. But people who built London. London was built on the backs of poverty.
Yeah.
People who have nothing to say they were here. They're sometimes treasured, often broken objects that are in the river. And I love that about it. And I think it could be a great meeting place for everybody from wherever they are to come together and find something shared in the river. And the river's so important. We wouldn't be here without it.
Yeah.
So, it's such an important place.
And brought people from all over the world here.
Absolutely.
It was interesting when I came on your foreshore walk, there was a woman there from Australia who'd come specially for that foreshore walk.
Yes.
From Australia.
Yes, I should say I don't do foreshore walks. The only people I do them for are you, Southwark Cathedral. So I do a couple.
And we're very grateful for that.
I do a couple of a year for you, which I love doing, actually.
And you also curate the revolving monthly mudlark exhibitions.
Yes. So Southwark being the river's own cathedral, I like
Absolutely.
To say. It has very close associations with the river and, brilliantly with mudlarking as well. So if people want to see some mudlarking objects, just come to the cathedral. Just inside the door, there are 2 cases. One of them changes every month. So we get different mudlarks to just do a little display just to give people an idea of what they get from the river, because everybody gets something different from mudlarking. You know? And everybody interprets it in different ways. I'm really enjoying seeing the way that people interpret their finds and interpret what they get out of it. And the other one is a static case, and it shows you the most commonly found objects. It'll give you an idea of what can be found. And I should say right now, though, that you do need a permit to mudlark from the Port of London Authority. The waiting list is currently closed. There are 10,000 people on the waiting list.
10,000?
Yes.
That just shows the sort of interest there is in it.
Huge interest in it, yeah. I think for a long time it was a bit of a hidden secret. Social media has done a huge amount to share it. There have been television shows, and I've written a couple of books as well. So, but I love sharing it, and I think everyone has a right to engage in it, as long as they've got a permit. Everyone has a right to engage in it. Like I say, it's a shared history. There's a little bit of us all down there.
On behalf of the cathedral, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, because you were a real friend of the cathedral, a huge support, and you bring loads of people to us.
Thank you very much. And we should also mention Mudlarking Day. We've got Mudlarking and Heritage Craft Day coming up at the cathedral, and it's in its 5th or 6th
I think
year.
it is.
We've been doing that for quite a few years.
And getting bigger each year.
Lots of mudlarks are going to be in the cathedral itself, showing people what they found on the river. And outside, you can see the heritage craft workers, how the things that the mudlarks found were actually made and used.
Yeah.
And it is on the
July the 25th.
July the 25th.
Details on the cathedral website and on Eventbrite.
Yes. So we've got that coming up.
So come along to that. Do you want to tell us where we can find your books?
You can buy my books anywhere you buy your books, but if you get them from the cathedral bookshop, they're all signed and you get a free pin with each book. So you get a free foreshore found pin that dates anywhere between 1400 and 1800 included with your book. So
fantastic.
And you can find me on social media if anyone's interested in seeing the sort of things I find. I post on Instagram as london.mudlark and on Facebook as London Mudlark.
Thank you, Lara.
You're welcome.